What's everybody? Welcome to the video. Pennell here, and we are back. Kind of. Not going to do the official welcome back until the Daytona 500 video, but we're talking the Daytona Duels, which is going to set the grid for the 500 on Sunday. And I do want to apologize for not having a Clash video last week. First time we haven't done one or a live stream, but with the way the weather cooperated with us, or I should say not cooperated with NASCAR, it just made the schedule basically impossible to get out content aside from the website. But it looks like we're going to be good to go for the duels, so we shouldn't have any issues there. But anyway, if you do find this video helpful, enjoyable, informational, entertaining, whatever it may be, make sure you leave a like down below, subscribe channel for brand new. Let's dive right into it. All right, let's talk some strategy here for the duels. Now, if you don't know what the duels are or how the grid is set or what they mean, what they do, I'll try to summarize it very quickly. So on Wednesday, we are going to have qualifying. Now, this does not set the grid for Sunday. This merely sets the front row for Sunday. So whoever is the two fastest cars in qualifying, they will get their spots locked on Sunday. Now, the rest, so the qualifying session will set the grid for the duels. And then how they finish in the duels sets the rest of the grid. So if you win Duel 1, you're going to start third. If you win Duel 2, you're going to start fourth, and so on. This year, we'll also have 45 drivers attempting for the 41 spots that are available. We have 36 charter teams fully locked in, plus Jimmy Johnson, and that leaves 8 open spots for guys that are not full-time charters. So that will leave 8 open drivers for 4 spots. And of the 8 open teams, the 2 fastest in qualifying will be locked in on Sunday, which means the highest finishing open team in each duel will make it to Sunday's race. And I'm not going to list all the open teams here. We'll go over that when we go driver by driver. But these will be 60-lap sprint races. And I would say the only strategy when it comes to the duels is typically you want to avoid the front row because the guys that are already logged in don't really have too much incentive to try. Although last year or the year before, we had Joey Logano starting on the pole, and while he didn't completely try as hard as he still finished 5th and was actually one of the better value plays because DraftKings made him very cheap because he was on the pole. And typically we see Alex Bowman start on the pole and he would drop back, finish that last, and he's just a completely useless play. Then we had Austin Cindric locked in last year, and he actually won his duel race. So it can be a bit iffy, and I do think it's very driver dependent on who makes it, because we have seen a long history of a guy like Alex Bowman saying if he makes it, he will drop back. But sometimes those Penske drivers can be a bit more frisky. All right, now there is a lot to mention with the new website, and trust me, I will do that soon. I have to do my plug. But I do want to show you guys the race analyzer, because I think we can kind of take a look at the past duel races, see who the best scorers have been, see where they start, see where they finish, see which drivers they are. I think it could probably be a tad bit helpful. So basically here for every series, we can pull up any race. We can see the loop data. We can see the DraftKings or FanDuel points. We can see where they start, see where they finish, laps led, all that fun stuff. So you can also look at single races, pick the track, pick the series, pick the year, pick whichever race. I realize you cannot see the drop downs, but there is plenty. Or we can go to aggregate races where, say you want to look at the past 6 Daytona races. You can do that, or the Auto Club or Atlanta, whatever it may be, and then we'll aggregate the data and you can export everything to a CSV. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at Daytona in last year's duel race specifically. So this is actually combining both of them, but I do want to take a look at the highest scorers and where they started. So as you can see, it's mainly PD. Now, it's not full-on complete stack to back, because that's typically where you get the Cody Wares, JJ Yaley's. They're trying, of course, but they don't necessarily have to win. They're just racing the other open teams. But for example, the best scorers are right in that sweet spot. 15th for Bubba Wallace, 18th for Eric Jones, 19th for Chastain, 11th for Byron, 9th for Buschers. Nobody inside the top 10 besides Buescher, and he was 9th, was our highest scorers. We had Austin Cindric starting on the pole for his duel race 2, leads 5 laps, 46 fantasy points. At his price point, that was great, but it is always risky, because if they get into a tricky situation, they can always pull out, not try, and you're dead because they don't have that cushion. But this is still plate racing. They're still trying. Most of them are going to be trying out there, and things are going to shuffle around. So it really just makes sense to target the drivers in the back half of the field, closer to the back, and the ones that actually have a legit chance of potentially winning the race. Now, if we take a look at the 2024 duels, we're going to sort this by DraftKings points once again, and it's really just more of the same. The highest scorers, Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell, Hocevar, Hamlin, Nemechek, Zane Smith, Eric Jones, all starting 12th on back, and pretty much the large majority of them 15th on back. So the name of the game is not necessarily completely stacking the back like we're going to do at Daytona, but maybe like stacking the mid to lower back half, if that makes any sense. It's really the sweet spot. Now, it can be qualifying dependent. We've had a lot of good drivers qualify in that range for these dual races the past 2 years. but it does make plenty of sense. I mean, if we look at 2023, we're going to see pretty much something similar here. Now, it's not always the case, but we did have Joey Logano starting in third. If we get a situation where Logano starts in the top 5 and not on the pole, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities to where he just gets up front, leads half the race, wins it, and it's still a solid fantasy day. It's just his floor is a lot lower. I mean, LaJoy starting in 20th, Bell in 11th, Blaney in 4th, Almirola in 2nd. So this year was actually a little bit closer to the front half, but still solid scores from Michael McDowell in 13th, Todd Gilliland in 17th. It's a little bit more of a mixed bag there for sure. And then in 2022, the last one we're going to look at from the next gen races, we have Buescher in 14th, Kessin 9th, McDowell 11th, 7th, 11th, 10th, 9th, 16th. So for me, I'm kind of looking at the middle of the pack, unless we get a situation where it's like Blaney in 4th, Logano in 5th, and I think they can kind of just have a clean race up front, lead half of it, and finish up top. But that'll be better suited for tournaments. All right, before we go driver by driver, I do have to mention the new website. I know I teased it at the end of last year, but it has finally been completed. It's been a long process, but I think it's pretty awesome. I do think you guys will like it if you come in and try it out. But there's a ton of extra content here besides what I do on YouTube for the Cup, Xfinity, or the O'Reilly series, if that's what you want to call it now, and the Truck series. Everything has been completely revamped. I built it for DFS and bettors. We know what we like. We know what we like to use and see. Well, I put it all in one spot for everybody. Of course, with the data table that everyone knows and loves, you can make your own custom charts with whatever stats you want to use. We have driver cards here that makes things really nice and simple. We have the projections page, which has lots of nice nuggets on it. We have driver profiles. We have distribution charts now in our my simulations. I run many sims for everything. It all feeds into one spot. So we have floors, ceilings, and distribution charts, which I really find interesting to look at. You have projection comparisons, the heat map, the charts here, using whatever stats you'd like. And if you want to hand build, you can do that as well for DraftKings and FanDuel. For those of you that like to bet, we have driver sims with fair odds, manufacturer sims, team sims, the head-to-head tool, pick any driver you want, and finish distribution charts, and you can slot it here and you get the fair market value for every single driver. We also have practice sheets that actually come alive. You can plot certain drivers and look at their actual lap times here. You can select everybody and look at that complete giant mess, but it is kind of easy. And if you go over certain drivers, it will highlight them so you can compare them to the field. I also have my own lap analyzer that has a bunch of math that goes into it and makes your own custom scores. And you can design it any way you want. If you want to put less emphasis on pace, as you can see, the overall score will change there, but I find it something very fun to look at. Green flag speed model, which has track types. You can look at your own custom ones, or you can look at, say, 2025, for example, or 2024 at specific tracks. You can pick short, flats, concrete, intermediates, whatever it may be. And for the grand finale, a brand new optimizer that I built. It's very quick, very fast to use. As you can see, it builds pretty much instantly. You can export them right to DraftKings. I have it for DraftKings and FanDuel. And for the class, I already had someone take down the big FanDuel tournament. So if you want to come in and check it out, you go over to the pricing page. And if you are a new user, you can sign up completely free for a week. Just you have to make sure you come down, click subscribe on any of these packages, and you will get the first week for free to test out all the tools. All right, so we're going to go driver by driver, break this all down. We'll start with Duel 1, then we'll head over to Duel 2. Now, I was waiting on DraftKings to finally post the salaries, and I was already in some preliminary sims, so it is now 2 a.m., so hopefully I don't stumble over myself and make some mistakes, because I am tired. But we do have some early stuff up, and I'm probably going to polish these up by the morning or afternoon tomorrow. But I think maybe instead of going by salary, we should probably go by the qualifying grid here for the dual race. I think that probably ends up making the most sense. So we do have our front row locked in. That'll be Kyle Busch on the pole. Shout out to him. Had a great qualifying run, first time ever in his long career. And then we have the qualifying merchant himself, Chase Briscoe, on the pole for Duel 2. These guys are both locked in. So as for Kyle Busch, as far as being a DFS play in Duel 1, I would have very, very low interest. Is there the chance that he kind of just goes for it? You know, he's an old vet. He doesn't really care. He just goes for it and actually tries his best. Yes, but even then, it's like, what is the upside? I mean, obviously, in a perfect scenario, he could end up winning the race, but there's not that many laps to lead. You're not really generating fast laps on a consistent basis on a drafting track, and everything has to go perfect for you to even just win and crack roughly around 50 points. So to me, it just doesn't make any sense to play Kyle Busch. Like, for example, if we look at his projection, like I said, these are very preliminary, so things can change, of course, but I have him all the way down here at 30. I gave him a decent projected finish with 9.5, and even then, that's probably more on the looking at the glass half full type of things. And if we look at his distribution, I mean, there's just not much upside. I mean, his floor is low. I know my head's blocking it really quick, but yeah, I mean, he has a floor of 10.2, a ceiling of 43.8. Obviously, he could, but that's like that 90th percentile outcome. There's just not much upside there for me. So even in a perfect scenario for Kyle Busch, he just does not seem like the best DFS play to me, so I will be out on that. As for Ryan Preece, he is slightly more playable, but even then, I think it's a low probability that he ends up being in the optimal. Same can be said for Corey Heim. He's already locked in to the 500 based off qualifying speed, so there's really no reason to go crazy. Sure, you can get a better starting spot on the grid, but it doesn't really matter. Alex Bowman in fourth, I would say he's probably the most playable driver that we've talked about so far, but I'm still not that interested. He does have one teammate, William Byron, who's going to be starting in 12th in this race, so maybe they can work together. The two other Hendrick cars in Duel 2, but even then, these are just low outcome plays to where it's risky. Yes, if you're playing 150, of course, I would have Alex Bowman in my player pool. I'm sure they're playing over like a Kyle Busch, a Corey Heim. I mean, his price range it's decent enough to where if he finishes in the top 5, it's not killing you by any means. And the next two guys in 5th and 6th, I actually think Chris Buescher and Joey Logano are very intriguing tournament plays. You could maybe even get away with Joey Logano in cash games, although it just seems a bit unnecessary as a risk. But if we look at our little chart here of average running position, average driver rating, specifically at Daytona and the next gen era, top two guys for running position driver rating are going to be Joey Logano and Chris Buescher. They both run very well here. And I would not be surprised at all if they were able to get up front, control the race. I think Joey Logano is probably the best chance of dominating in this one, maybe outside of Kyle Busch, depending on how hard he ends up trying. But I would definitely be interested in both in GPPs, and I'd lean towards Joey Logano if money is not an issue. Austin Dillon, Corey LaJoie, John Hernimacek, they all look the same there. They're not going to project the best just because of their price points. You might get some of them in MME, but if I am doing single entry hand builds, 3 maxes, very low probability they would crack my lineup. And then 10th through 12th, we actually get a really good string of drivers here, and these are going to be some of the absolute best projection plays on the entire slate. Expect some very heavy ownership here, but you get Brad Keselowski in 10th, Ryan Blaney in 11th, and William Byron in 12th. We know William Byron's got a couple of wins here at Daytona, just most recently for the 500. Last year, Ryan Blaney, one of the best plate racers in the series. And Brad Keselowski, well, he does have one leg now, has to walk with a cane, and definitely a bit washed up, but back in his heyday, he was an excellent plate racer, so I'd expect some pretty heavy ownership here. If you want to play them in cash games, by all means, I would say go for it. If I had to rank them, I would currently have it Ryan Blaney, William Byron, and Brad Keselowski, but you should not have many issues trying to fit in at least 2 of these drivers. Cole Custer, Cody Ware, Jimmy Johnson, these are probably going to be avoids for me. If I was going to play one, it's most likely going to be Cody Ware, as odd as that sounds. But Jimmy Johnson's already locked in with his provisional, whatever you want to call it. He is the special driver this year for the 500. Bubba Wallace does project as the best for me. I mean, we're splitting hairs with these guys up top, like Blaney, Byron, Keselowski, even Ross Chastain. But this is just the sweet spot for the duels. We talked about it. Starting 10th on back with legit chance of winning the race. This is where you want to be for DFS. But Wallace, I believe he's won a dual race before. I feel like he was very recently. He did win one, but he does perform very well at Daytona. I like him a lot there, starting in 16th. And the same exact thing can be said for Ross Chastain. I do prefer Wallace just slightly more. He's only $200 more expensive, but these are very similar plays. And if I am playing cash games, I am starting with Ross Chastain, Bubba Wallace, Ryan Blaney, if I can, at least 2 of those drivers. AJ Allmendinger, a fine play starting in 17th. Also love the tribute they're doing to Greg Biffle this week with that 16 car. SVG, a fine salary saver if you're looking for some place differential. Same with Daniel Suarez. Both actually project very well given their price points and how they fit into lineups. And really, the only driver I would avoid back here is Casey Mears. I know he's trying to race his way in, but I do think that 66 car is certainly going to struggle on speed. And there's nothing wrong with Noah Gragson. He got disqualified because he put his hand out the window. It's a new rule. They can't do that during qualifying. And Chandler Smith's in a front row car, same as Noah Gragson. So, I mean, they're going to be starting in the back. I think things are going to shuffle around a little bit. Obviously, someone has to finish last next to Casey Mears. But the floor is great, and it's really only room to go up. All right, since it's just a dual race, I don't mind showing you guys the optimizer here. So let's just run a quick 150 just to look at what the potential exposures could be. Obviously, I'd play around with this a little bit more, but just a quick 150, 25% randomness. Click crunch there, and it's already done. Works very quick, like I mentioned earlier, but no surprise here. Looking at the top exposures, Bubba Wallace, Ryan Blaney, William Byron, Daniel Suarez for just salary relief. A lot of Joey Logano, even though he does start 6th. Brett Keselowski, Gragson, SVG. So not really surprised there. Of the big name PD plays, it looks like Ross Chastain is getting thrown in there the least, and Kyle Busch currently lowest exposed. Jimmy Johnson, which those other two guys kind of locked in already. I mean, I don't know what to expect out of Kyle Busch. We don't have confirmation that he wouldn't try or not try. It just, the ceiling is not there. It doesn't exist. You're just really hoping for the best possible outcome. And even then, it's a low ceiling compared to other drivers. All right, moving on to Duel 2. We're going to do the same thing here. I think it probably makes more sense to sort this just by the qualifying grid. This duel does have one less driver, 23 in the first one, 22 in this one. And like I mentioned, Chase Briscoe, he is locked in here. I believe last year in his duel, he didn't have it locked in on the pole. Looking for the, yeah, he started in first, did end up finishing 19th in that one. So if he ends up doing that again, I would not be surprised at all, although that was for the pole, I believe, instead of race 2. But that's a risky run. If you run the pole sitter here, there's a very decent chance they can just kind of park it and finish pretty much last. So I would not be having any Chase Briscoe. It doesn't make any sense to me to want to play him. Denny Hamlin starting in second. It's just very risky to me. I know the appeal of Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott here, where they could lead half the race, maybe they win. It's very tough because their floor compared to other drivers is certainly going to be low if we look at their projections here and look at floor. So as far as Denny Hamlin is concerned here, 39.4 projection. I'm projected to finish 6.1, which is actually best of all drivers. I'm projected to win this duel race. That does not mean he's going to be the best DFS play in the world. His floor is at 20.4. Just for example, Hocevar starting in 14th, his floor is 20.8. Gillen at 20.6. Even Ty Dillon, his floor is at 19.3. So I mean, it's right on par with Denny Hamlin. And his ceiling's at 48.6 compared to other guys down here, like a Hocevar, 54.1, 54.2, Ty Dillon, 51.2. It's just, there's not much room for growth there if you roster these drivers up in the very front. Now, if they lead 30 laps, win, yeah, you're nailing that lower probability outcome. Whereas you can see in that bucket there of, like, I know I'm kind of blocking it, but 50 to 55 points, that's happening 4% of the time for me. Meanwhile, 40 to 45 points is happening nearly a quarter of the time, and so on. So it's just, the ceiling is very lackluster at tracks like this because of the lack of fast laps. You can't really nail dominator points. So they're in the GPP pool because they can hit those outcomes. It's just, it's more unlikely, if you get what I'm saying. Same can be said for Ty Gibbs, Christopher Bell. I would say is in a very similar boat there. Just an Allgaier. He is locked into the 500. Shout out to Junior Motorsports. Now, Austin Cindric is a guy that I do have a lot of interest in. I think he's very similar to, say, Joey Logano in the first duel. Austin Cindric, in my opinion, is the best plate racer in NASCAR right now. I would say the only downside about Austin Cindric in this one is that he's going to be without his teammates, Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney. It certainly does help to have those guys next to you. So he's going to be a little bit on his lonesome. He does have Josh Berry lingering in 13th. Maybe they could link up. But as far as like powerful forwards in this field, I'm not really seeing them. I'm seeing a lot of JGR here. I'm seeing some Hendrick, but not really seeing many Ford friends here besides like Josh Berry. So that's the only downside. Not saying Austin Cindric can't draft well with other drivers. I do think he's the best in this series right now. So we'll have to see. But I do like Austin Cindric a lot for this. I just view him as a very similar play to Joey Logano, where maybe he leads some laps. Maybe he just finishes top 5, top 3, $8,200. I'd be happy with that, starting almost mid-pack. Not quite there, but almost. Zane Smith's in a tougher spot for me, starting in 9th. He does offer you salary relief, but I'd kind of rather chase more place differential when I'm going that cheap. He's only an MME play. Same can be said for Michael McDowell. Same can be said for Connor Zilch. It's kind of just a dead zone for me. Eric Jones is very good at drafting tracks, specifically Daytona. I kind of like him in tournaments being overweight there. Josh Berry in 13th. It might make sense if you're overweight on Austin Cindric to have Josh Berry and just hoping they work together and both kind of sneak in top 5s. Obviously, starting in 13th, that'd be a lot better for Josh Berry than Austin Cindric, but I do trust Austin Cindric just a tad bit more. I believe it was the last year's duel race when he already had the front row locked in. Yeah, he started first. Yeah, in the 14, whatever the day was. Started first, finished first. Ran very well in that one. 46.3 DraftKings points. And he was very cheap in that one. I think he was in the 6K range, obviously a little bit more expensive this time. Carson Hocevar, this field kind of sucks, honestly. The other field's a lot more fun as far as drivers starting mid-pack and back. I mean, this one's just gross. I mean, Carson Hocevar looks good just because there's not many other guys here starting in 14th. I wouldn't say he's a great plate racer. He usually just kind of hangs around in the back and grabs his finish in the actual races. Riley Herb starting in 15th. Unfortunately, I just think he's going to have to be in the player pool because there's really not much down here. Anthony Alfredo in 17th. He is actually racing for something. If you want to give him the motivation boost there, Todd Gilliland. There's finally another Ford. I mean, yeah, Austin Cindric, Zane Smith, Josh Berry, Todd Gilliland. That's really about it we got for Fords in this one. Ty Dillon, I think he's probably going to be one of the better pump plays. And actually, in his dual race last year, I was not on him. He started 5th, but he actually finished 3rd. And I believe someone that I know, I actually ended up taking down the dual race because of that, because no one at all played Ty Dillon. Because why would you starting in 5th ends up being the nuts of very low ownership. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is going to be very chalky. Tyler Reddick's going to be very chalky. So yeah, if you're looking for your cash game staples here, I mean, obviously, it's absolutely going to be Tyler Reddick. And the funny thing is, he was actually in a very similar situation. I want to say it was 2 years ago in a dual race where he started pretty much in the very back and actually ends up winning it. I don't think it was 2025. Yeah, it wasn't 2025. Starting 14th, finishes 5th, but I think it was 2024 where, yeah, he started 19th, so exactly what he's going to be doing in this one, I believe, and then he finished 1st and ends up being the dual nuts, and he's starting at 20th in this one, so one spot further back. But yeah, cash games, you're going to have to play Reddick, you're going to have to play Ricky Stenhouse. Ty Dillon I really do like as for a punt. BJ McLeod and JJ Yaley, they're going to be racing against Alfredo. I mean, they're going to be slower. I think I'd trust BJ McLeod maybe slightly more, but honestly, if this does not have chaos or carnage, anything like that, these two are most very likely to finish in the very back. And I'll run the optimizer once again. So we'll do a quick 150 here. We're going to put 25% randomness on, and I assume it's just going to be a lot of Tyler Reddick and a lot of, I'd probably say like Ricky Stenhouse, which absolutely, I mean, Tyler Reddick's getting pumped in nearly 80% of the time. He's going to be very high owned on that second slate there. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Austin Cindric popping in a ton, a lot of Eric Jones there. Christopher Bell, even though he's starting in 6th, I think it's just a lack of good plays in the back, really, so I guess that makes sense. Todd Gilliland getting thrown in maybe more than I expected. Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin, kind of curious to see. They're roughly around 40%, which looking at the optimal rates for even where they're starting, Hamlin's at 37, Chase Elliott's at 38, so just kind of like the lack of great plays, I would say, on this one. So this is definitely a little bit more wide open. Personally, for me, I kind of like building for Duel 1 a bit better, but obviously we're going to play both. With that being said, that's all for today's video, so I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, or even if you didn't, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below. I'll be more than happy to answer them. It's great to be back. If you want to check out the new website, cpenndfs.com, you can send the link down below in the description or the pinned comment for that. We wish you all the best, and I'll see you on Saturday for the Daytona 500 breakdown.